Welcome. This is the Public Works Podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman, and today I got a real treat for you. His name is Steven Sanders, and he is the head trainer at the Environmental Training Center at Morrisville State in beautiful Morrisville, New York. Steven, say what's up to everybody.
Hey, what's going on? It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure thing, man. Sure thing. So I found you on LinkedIn. You got this really cool title. So the head of Environmental Training Center at Morrisville State, plus you're part of the WEF Board of Trustees, and then also the New York or the NYSA WWA Board of Governors. We'll dive into all that. But for right now, just tell us what you do at Morrisville State, kind of what the 30,000-foot view of what your day-to-day is like.
Yeah, so my day-to-day is I train. There's a lot of pre-certification training requirements for operators in New York State. So all these operators who want to be drinking water operators, wastewater operators, they get hired and they have to come through my courses to get trained. And so I am the head trainer and as well as the director of the program. And so that's kind of where, my intersection is. I started not from academics. I was doing all this stuff myself. As far as being a drinking water operator, a wastewater operator, I was doing all that stuff myself. And so this is kind of fun for me to actually give some of that back.
Yeah, I like it. Usually when we get trainers or who are setting the curriculum, it's not really from practice. So it's cool that you've actually done it yourself, and now you can kind of help get others, through the courses and get their certifications so they can go on and start their careers. What would you say, in your line of work, what would you say is something that you've bumped up against to where, like I see the silver tsunami a lot. There's a lot of guys who are leaving this industry. They have all these gifts, skills, and talents, knowledge, and wisdom. They're leaving the industry, and a city or utility might have to get the youngster up to speed as quick as possible. So, are you seeing that on your end? Like, kind of what are you bumping up against in the types of people who come through your program?
Yeah, so we see that a lot. We see that a lot nationally as well. One of the things that I don't think, and this is funny, I do a lot of work with New York's Conference of Mayors, and we're looking at this whole situation. And what cracks me up is when someone puts out an advertisement for a top tier operator, and it's like, that person is not at home unemployed. This person has already went through all the steps. They're already employed. And so they say, I need a grade 4 operator. I need a top grade drinking water operator. That person already has a job. So It's like, how do you get that person? So what we see is a lack of succession planning. And it's just really, really bad. And here's the other complaint that I hear from a lot of mayors and governors and everything else. It's like, I trained this person and then they left. Oh, really? Okay. So how could you have kept them? Why did they leave? Oh, well, they went for a job paying more money. So it's like, there's a way you can keep these folks, but you have to create the culture, the environment to actually keep them in your facility, your town, city, village, municipality. You have to find a way to keep them there.
Yeah. It's I don't know where I read this from, and I might be wrong, but a lot of people, they might not, unless the money is really drastically different, they're not leaving for money. Sometimes it's culture, sometimes it's the people they work for, sometimes it's the city might be changing. They might want to go try something else somewhere. People are upwardly mobile nowadays. People have the opportunity to, they can go somewhere else. What have you seen that has worked? Because again, a lot of governments tell me, they say, well, we can't just pay them more. What have you seen that has worked? Like, should it be more pizza parties? Should it be like Friday foot massages? Like what,
I think a lot of it is culture. I mean, you can pay somebody money, but that's blood money if the culture's not right. It really is.
Yeah.
So it's like, is the culture right? Does this work for me and my family? Is there a ceiling? Are you investing in me for me to go further in my career? A lot of it is culture. And you can pay me more money, but if the culture is not right, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be a good situation. So yes, money makes a difference, and I like to believe that part of what I do, I'm like, yes, I'm making, I'm helping to teach the next generation of water stewards, but I'm also making it easier for them to put food on the table. But they have to be in the right culture. Our brain is soil. It's like we have to, take in the right things for us to grow. And I think culture is a really big thing.
Yeah, I learned this at a younger age. Younger meaning like I'm 37 now, and I probably learned this 7 years ago. That they call it the look down the hall test. Where you're in your job and you look down the hall at the corner office, probably your boss, right? If you don't like what their life looks like, meaning the stress that they're going through, the amount of hours they work, the weekends, the nights, the recitals that they miss, the fourth wife that they're on. Like, if you don't like their life, sometimes it might be time for you to jump ship, because that's what your life will look like if you keep striving for that position. And I do think we live in a culture, or maybe it's shifting. It's shifting from a culture of that workaholism, meaning their whole identity was tied up into their career, into their job. Now I feel like a lot of the millennials, Gen Zers, we want to go to a place to work, get our money, and go do what we want to do with it, with our family, friends, or whatever. We don't really have our whole identity tied into that career, to that job.
And you're 100% correct. And I think COVID kind of smacked us in the face with that, because all of a sudden people started to realize what's important to them.
Yep.
And it was like, okay, what's important to me? I've been doing this job forever, but all of a sudden I realized this is a horrible job. I want to do something that has more impact, that's more meaningful to me and my family. And I think culture, culture is a part of that, but I think COVID really kind of smacked a lot of us in the face and said, all right, what are you really doing with your life? There was a book, it was called 4,000 Weeks. And basically 4,000 weeks was how much time the average human has in their lifespan. And when you put it into weeks, it makes it scary. And people all of a sudden they're like, what am I doing with my life? I only have 4,000 weeks,
Yeah. Like we have 3 children now. We got a 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and a 6-week-old. And like, sometimes I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, we only have 52 weeks of my child's first year. So are we going to spend it like arguing with each other and bickering about this or that? Like, we only have 52 weeks in this year of time with this, So it does definitely bring it as perspective. And I do think COVID, yes, there were bad things that happened. Like it was real, like people passed away, like it was a thing. But I do think there were some efficiencies built into it. But the way that, COVID forced us all, like you said, to audit what we're doing, audit what made sense for us to do. It was a big shakeout, and I think society is a little bit healthier from it. But I digress.
No, so here's the other thing with that too. It's like COVID came around and made us think about what's important, what's not important. But the other thing that it raised, as far as society's mindset, was, public works was not considered essential workers. We thought we were. We're coming into the plant and we're doing this and we're cleaning the streets and we're doing that. And all of a sudden, I have my governor thinking the DoorDash guy, thinking the bus drivers, thinking the people who work at the grocery store. And my wife's a nurse. I get health care, but we were nowhere involved in any of this conversation.
Yeah.
So it really showed a void that we need to fill. We need to communicate value to our communities so that people see us as essential workers, just like they see everyone else.
Yeah, I tell everybody the Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, and then they have like Chicago EMT, and they do like a big mashup show. Like, it's a TV show, and they do a big mashup show. And I say, why can't they have Chicago Public Works in with with the rest of them? They do essential things. Like, it's pretty cool to film, like to watch on a big screen. Like, it's a lot of action in it. It's a lot of, intensity and suspense in it. So why can't Public Works kind of get onto that next level? But I think we'll be asking that question a lot, because most of the people in Public Works that I know, they just want to go to work, do a great job, and go home. They don't need a microphone,
And so this is what we've been trained. Like I said, I've been doing this for over 20 years. For the longest time, when I first started, people told me that if they don't know about us, we're doing our job.
I've heard that.
Because they know about us, we're not doing our job, and there's a problem. And now all of a sudden we're on the news.
Yep.
And so I'm like, that mentality has to change. It can't be if they don't know about us, we're doing our job. We have to be proactive with communicating value to what we do. It just is unsustainable. All right, they don't know about us, and let's say we're doing a great job, and then all of a sudden 1/3 of our workforce decides to retire. How do we recruit the next group of people to come in? They don't know about us.
Yeah. That's why I started the podcast. Let's talk curriculum for a little bit. All
right.
A buddy of mine, Chad O, he made a good point on one of our conversations. He says, there's two things you could do to kind of get more people into the industry. You pay them more, or you can lower the rate, the barrier to entry, the regulations. To be honest, you're kind of a gatekeeper. Meaning you write the curriculum that they have to pass a test to get their certifications. Is there ever a sense that you're thinking like, maybe this test is too hard and is keeping people out from these essential jobs, for getting into it? Or you're thinking like, no, we need to have a certain standard because people, we don't want to have another Flint, Michigan, or negligence or anything like that. Kind of what's that mental gymnastics that you do to make sure that people can pass the test to get in? And I'm saying, people like us, people who want good jobs but can't get into them unless they know somebody or they could pass the test. So, okay, tell me what you're thinking.
So,
let me stop. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. So I work a lot with our state regulators here in New York. I'm on our Operator Certification Governance Council. I review all of the state exam questions. I do all that stuff. And there's a certain mentality like, yes, we need more people in the field. But then there's another mentality that we have to say we can't just open the doors to everyone. Because it's like you're in a position of public trust. So it's like, when you turn on your water at your house, you don't think that it's going to be a problem. But if you just open the doors to everybody, then we got a problem, right? So, and I know how other states do it. And we aim for us here, we want more people into the field. But I think for us in New York, we like to look at about a 50% pass-fail rate. And that helps us to say, you know what, if it's over 50%, maybe the doors are open too wide. And if it's under 50%, maybe we need to open the doors a little bit more as far as the gatekeeper. And so we look at those things. And, I work very closely with WPI, Water Professionals International, as far as their questions and everything else. But that's a hard balance. And I think, I don't think we should change our standard. I think we need to change the field of people coming in. Yes. Because let's say we open the field from 50% to 100%. Those who actually make it through the process are going to be better. But when we only have 50 to 25% of the field coming in, it's harder for them to pass the test and become operators. Yeah.
No, you're saying it perfectly. I see it as like a venture capitalist. Like a lot of them, they need deal flow. They need hundreds and hundreds of deals to look at to find that unicorn. Same with you. Instead of having 100 people to take that test and 50 fail, 50 pass, you need 1,000. So that
Exactly.
top 50% of that 1,000 is, they're the cream of the 50% crop. So, yeah.
So, and the other thing too, I want to mention this program that a buddy of mine is doing in Boston. And I think this is amazing. So, and maybe he's somebody you can have on later on. His name is Don Sands. He is the executive director of Excel Education. And basically what he does is he does training for wastewater operators. However, as he's doing this training, he makes sure that he's doing the training where there's public transportation. He makes sure he's doing this training and these folks have to show up. And he calls it job readiness, which I think is amazing. So it's like, he goes to place people into jobs. And what does the employer want? They want people who's going to show up on time. They want people who is going to be able to accept constructive criticism. They want people who can work in a group. And it's like he teaches all of those things. And I incorporate that in my teaching. But me and him we had this moment where we were talking about this stuff. And I was like, that's the other element that I think that a lot of these training centers really need to bring in.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because his component definitely can feed your component, if that makes sense. Like the two cogs work well together. Like I remember coming out of college, it was Qit, and then also I think it was like Hertz Rental Car, one of those rental car companies. They hired college athletes. That's all they wanted was college athletes. And I was a college athlete. So everybody was like, oh, go work for that company or that company because they hired college athletes. And sports, it teaches you that. You can get yelled at, cussed at, all that, but you got to get out there and perform. Teamwork. I mean, you're playing with 50 other guys from all the different all different walks of life, and you have to get the job done. And then also, you said showing up on time. If you come to practice without your cleats and your helmet, like it's going to be a tough season for you. So I do think that like every one of these programs should like job readiness. It's something that's overlooked. And I hate to say it, but culturally, not every culture gets that. Not every demographic, has that or has that to a certain extent. So I really like that.
And then how you speak, and this is something that I've learned over the last couple of years as far as teaching, doing this for 15 years or so teaching, is you can't talk to individuals the same way that perhaps we were talked to. So as far as trying to get people job ready, it's like it's a little bit difficult because you got to get them ready for some vocabulary and for some instruction and direction that they're not used to taking.
Yeah. Like when I give talks, I always have to make sure I say guys and girls or, men and women instead of just saying guys all the time. When, because there might be a woman in the room. There might be a woman in somebody's crew. So I have to say guys and girls. Another thing I wanted to get into was, kind of the background, the origin story of Steven, right? You're not a mushroom. You didn't pop up last night. You're the big dog test maker, but you had your way throughout the career. So give us kind of your career path from high school all the way up until what you do today.
So I graduated. I'm from Michigan. So when you speak about Flint, I'm all in on that. As far as understanding the nuances of Flint. I moved out to New York when I was 19 and moved out to New York and started working. And I ended up in a wastewater lab. And I wanted to know, I learned the nuts and bolts of the lab, but what do these numbers mean? What do these numbers mean? And then they slowly migrated me over into operations. And what was funny was there was a guy, and I would say he was one of my mentors if I had one, Wendell. And we used to make fun of Wendell because he worked at the wastewater plant. But Wendell at the time, I'm going to age myself. He was driving an Infiniti. He was doing what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did Wendell get that? He was a wastewater operator. So I got into operations. I started learning wastewater operations. I moved over to contract operations. I was running plants, the size of my office, you know, drinking water plants, wastewater plants for different small communities, neighborhoods. I did that for a number of years. You name it, I ran it as far as a facility. I did a brief stint over in Cleveland, Ohio. I worked outside of Cleveland for a minute and then came back, took my job over, and then slowly migrated down into some of the bigger plants in New York State, Westchester County. I got down into Westchester with regards to New Rochelle. And then my last plant that I was running was Yonkers. So literally little package plants, that's the size of my office, teeny little plants, to Yonkers, which is like a 20-something acre facility. And we're dealing with, 100 MGD. And so that's kind of where all this stuff came from. And they asked me, they said, would you be interested in coming up and teaching these classes? Because I'm upstate New York right now. I lived in Connecticut, worked down in Westchester. And I said, no, I don't want to do these classes. And they're like, well, hold on a second. That was the head instructor. Well, would you be interested in coming up and being the director? And I said, no, I don't want to do it. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I was running Yonkers, operations in Yonkers. I was happy with that. So then they said, well, what if we combine the two positions? Would you be interested in coming up? Now, obviously, that raised the salary. So
combine that money. Yeah.
It made me think about it a little bit more.
No.
And so it was funny. So when I was back in Ohio, my old job was calling me to come back to New York. And I said, no, I'm good. I just moved my family across the country. I'm not moving back to New York. Well, we'll pay you this much. We'll pay you that much. We'll take care of your health care. I'm like, I just moved my family across the country. And they're like, well, listen, as I said, I have a lease. I'm just renting. I can't just get up and go. They're like, we'll pay off your lease if you come back. And it was a matter of me understanding that I had value. And I would say I'm the first to recognize that, imposter syndrome is real. And just coming to that realization that you have value. And so when they created this position, they made it for me. It was like, that was like the period on the sentence. You have value. And I think a lot of people need to hear that message, because a lot of times we don't hear that message. People who, underrepresented groups, we're fighting and scrapping for everything. But it's like, we have value. And so that rang loud and clear. And that's how I ended back out here and doing teaching.
Man, they paid the lease off. That's huge, man. That's big. That's big. Okay, so we got to dive in that a little bit more, because I love success stories, but I don't feel like success is luck. What type of person did you have to make yourself into to be able to make those moves and keep going on the up and up? You get what I'm asking?
Yeah. So, I had to get over my own self. And that's basically what it was. It was like, I had to get over my own self. I always thought I was privileged to be in the room. And to some degree, that's true. But at the same degree, sometimes you deserve a seat at the table. And I had to realize that. You deserve a seat at the table. And, TPO did a magazine, did an article, and they would talk about, they wanted to, so, all right, I'm not going to get too sidetracked, but TPO did this article, right? And I came back from Miami, and Miami gave me a little gift called COVID. And so I was on NyQuil at the time that the guy called me to do this interview. And so as he starts going, I'm doing the interview, but then he mentions like, hey, where did you go to school? And I said, University of Life. And he's like, what? I said, no, I went to University of Life. And he's like, I've never heard of this school.
Yeah, he missed it.
Yeah, sometimes, and I used to hide that. And that's something I'm proud of now. I used to hide the fact that I did not go to college and get a university degree. And yet I found myself sitting at the same table of other individuals and still making an impact. And it's not like I take anything away from those folks, but at the same time, I realized that I bring something to the table as well. And so he did this whole piece on the University of Life.
Did you find it on Google? Yeah.
So it was just like, no, I still bring something to the table. It's like, but it was just interesting to me. It's just like I had been hiding that for so long, and just coming out and being done with it was very refreshing. And I want other people to hear those type of stories that, you know, in our workforce, you know, that perhaps did not go and get a college degree, that it's like you could still be impactful. You could still do things.
You know, I love that that your adage on, you know, knowing that you deserve a seat at the table. I mean, so many times we get in these situations, in these rooms, and we're so thankful. Thanks for having me out, or thanks for bringing me on, or thanks for this. A lot of times I have to tell myself, dude, quit being so thankful. Like,
you deserve to be here.
Like, like, dude, they want to meet with you. Like, what are you thanking them for? They should be thanking you for. But that's a whole other tangent there. The skill sets. I'm sure it's, you know, since you're not necessarily operating anymore, it's probably a different type of skill set you had to pick up. If a youngster asked you, they're like, Stephen, what's the main skill set that you picked up to be successful at what you do today? What would that one skill set be?
So I have it. No one can see this, but I have it on my wall, and it's been on my wall for like the last 15 years.
Okay.
It's a quote by John Wooden, the UCLA basketball coach. And he says, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts.
Oh.
And it's like, okay, so it's a reminder to me that you never stop learning. That's the skill set that you need to have. You have to have the skill set that you're continuing to learn all the time. And it's funny. So I'll have people come through class, and I was like, wow, this guy is really smart. And guess what? He doesn't score the highest score in the class because he plateaued. That person plateaued. I have another person, and I try to tell my son this: learn how to learn. You know what? If you don't get it the first time, that's fine. Take the punch in the face. You didn't get it the first time. Learn how to learn. And if you realize that you don't get it the first time, and you just keep learning and learning and learning and learning, once you learn how to learn, the sky is the limit.
Yeah.
So, like I say, I have that. It's on my wall behind me. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. And I love that quote from John Wooden. And the other thing, too, is I got another one right behind that from Michael Jordan. He says, I can accept failure, but I cannot accept not trying. So if you're trying and you realize there's more to learn, you put those two things together, I think that's the skill set for success.
Okay. Appreciate that. I like to get tactical with it. So learning, always like to ask, what's your personal and professional development regimen like? You said you read TPO. Are you reading books? Are you reading white papers? You going to conferences? You know, what's your, I guess, personal development regimen like?
So that's good. So being with on the board with WEF, they send us all over the country. And so we're seeing things all over the country, and I'm bringing all that stuff back. And that's very edifying to me. I also like listening and reading to books. There is so much there to be had. And you know, let's face it, there's some books you feel like, this wasn't worth it, you know.
Yeah, it could have been an email. Yeah.
Yeah. And then to diversifying my network. I don't need to always surround myself with people who look like me or talk like me or think like me. So can I diversify my network? And I learned a lot that way, you know. So I say between those couple things, those three things, it's like being out, seeing what other places are doing, other states are doing, the reading, the books, diversifying the network. I think those are the things that really add to what I'm doing. You know, I try to take care of myself physically. You know, I need to get out, I need to get a walk. I feel bad that I did not join you for your push-ups.
Nah. Well, you can start it up, man.
See, I'm like, you'd have been like, I don't know who this guy is. All of a sudden, he wants to do push-ups with me.
It's all good, baby. I got lonely anyways, man.
But those are some of the things that, you know, that really kind of just keep the juices flowing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, it's story time. I need a story from Steven. When something went wrong under your watch, what you did to fix it, and then what lessons you learned from it to apply to your future career.
Whew. Okay. This was a question that I was looking at, and I was like, man, this is difficult. I couldn't think of any one particular thing, because again, I've learned from a lot of bad things that happened to me, you know. But one of the things that I would take away from all of those situations is that sometimes the most urgent things are not the most important things. And sometimes you're quick to respond to something, but perhaps you respond to it and not the most important way. And that's been something that, you know, that's reoccurred, and I finally got a hold of it. And it was like, don't respond, take some patience, and let's do this the right way. You know, and another one of my favorite quotes from John Wooden was, if you don't have time to do it right, when are you going to find time to do it again? You know? True. So I'm like, be patient. Big ships don't turn fast. You know, our careers, our lives are big ships. They don't turn fast.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just feel like you have to be patient with certain things. You have to be patient. Even though you don't get the immediate result, you have to be patient.
Okay. I for all those out there who are going to take the, you know, or not your test, but just tests in general to get their certifications, what would you say are, because I'm sure you have a lot of data on, you know, passes, fails, and all that. What would you say are some of the things guys and girls do to pass the test study-wise, like some of the study habits, you know, the mentality behind it? Maybe just rattle out some tips and tricks on to better position themselves for a test.
Yeah. So when I do my big anchor course, it's 60 hours, it's 2 weeks. We do full days for 2 weeks. And I talk about No Regret Friday. No Regret Friday, that's the day they take the exam. And I'm like, you don't want to be sitting in front of that test going, I wish I would have done this. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know, you don't want to do that. So what can you do to pass these exams? Be prepared. Get yourself in front of as many questions as possible. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm able to name some of these different avenues that you can do that, but as like, get yourself in front of as many questions as possible, and do the thought stopping. You know, sometimes thought stopping. Yeah. So you're sitting in front of the exam and you're worried about, what are the guys at the plant going to think? What is my significant other going to think if I don't pass this?
Yep.
Right? Yeah. There's nothing there's nothing you can do about it right now.
Yeah.
Right. So you take the exam. There's nothing you can do about it. You take the exam. You have to stop the thoughts. And I remember when I was younger, I was a paramedic, and there's two populations that really bother me: geriatrics and pediatrics, because they made you get into your head. You were thinking too much. And I remember as a student, I came into a situation. I'm like, we need to call 911. And I'm like, oh, we are 911, you know? But you have to stop these thoughts. If your emotions get involved in the test, you're going to have a problem. You gotta get your emotions out of it and be prepared. Be prepared. Get yourself in front of as many questions as possible. There's a lot of avenues out there. I know WEF has some stuff. There's another one, Roy CEU. I'm going to go ahead and start naming them. I'm not getting any royalties, but I'm going to start naming them. Get yourself, and questions is the only way that we have to quantify knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of states, it's not a matter of like, you know, you work with somebody for a certain amount of time, an apprenticeship, and all of a sudden, boom, they give you a certification. No, questions is the way that we qualify your knowledge. So get yourself in front of as many questions as possible.
Yeah. And you're kind of stepping into it with the whole royalty thing. Why? Okay. So why is there an industry around, you know, study materials, test taking, like to be able to be a water operator or to get your certification? I feel like if, you know, we really wanted society to move forward, we would make this information free and available, make the test a little bit harder, maybe, I don't know, whatever. And if they pass the test and they can't operate, but you know, the whole market behind it, and I see it all the time. Like, you know, I'm selling this or I'm teaching this course and it costs you $750. Like, A, is that equitable and inclusive? Like, do we want more people in the industry, or do we only want people in the industry who can afford that price tag to be able to study to take the test? I battle with that.
No, so the two that I mentioned are for free.
Okay.
So they are for free. And I do think we have to look at the gateway. You know, it's like, you know, again, we've been operating under this umbrella of, again, if they don't know about us, we're doing our job. But what happens though? The only time they know about us is when there's a problem or when we're asking for money. So, you know, how do you feel about a friend that only time he comes up is when there's a problem or he's asking for money? Yeah. So it's like, I don't need to deal with this dude, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I feel our industry has been treated over the last couple years.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we have to change that, you know? So it's like, you know, things should be free. Opportunity should be there. And I want operators and people who are in the public works sector to change their mindset from this is a challenge to this is an opportunity. From this is what I have to do to this is what I get to do. And if you see it that way, you know what? This is what I get to do. I get to come in and make the water better for my community. And so I want that shift to happen in people's brains. This is what I get to do for my community. And the other thing that I'll say too, I want to get rid of this whole, what do we call it? Public relations.
Talk to me.
So with public relations, we draw a line in the sand between us and them. They're the public, we're the workers.
Yeah.
You know what? A lot of times we live in the same area.
Yep.
I think we should look at this as community relations. You know, we're doing the same thing. We're educating the community, but we're also part of the community.
Yeah.
But sometimes people have this mindset that when you say public relations, it's like, oh, you're trying to school us.
Yeah.
Oh, you're trying to educate us.
Yep.
And you're drawing that line in the sand.
Yeah.
And it's like, it should be community relations. You know what? Your issues, my issues are your issues are my issues.
Yep.
We're all in this together.
Yeah. No, you're right. I asked that billboard question, and of course I'll ask it to you later, but you know, the ask of the community and people in wastewater, they say, stop flushing flushable wipes, right? Because that's the thing. But when people go to the length to say, hey, this lady said, hey, Billy is the person that has to pull out this big ball of wipes down the street at your lift station. And now they know that Billy lives in your community. Billy, you know, his kid plays soccer with your kid. You know, he goes to the same church, you know, same, you know, taqueria, whatever. Like, that's Billy. Billy's in your community. It humanizes it. It brings it home, you know, and like you said, that it's not that wall of like, let me publicly relate this to you. It's like, hey, we're on the same team here. Your problem's my problem. My problem's your problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk misconceptions. I'm sure you get a lot of interesting looks when you tell people what you do. You know, when they ask you, because you always get the question, you know, Stephen, what do you actually do? What do you do? And you say, I'm the head trainer at the Environmental Training Center at Morrisville State. What do you think they think about what you do?
They have no idea. So there's going to be some follow-up questions.
Yeah.
And that just tells me that it's like we've done a really bad job of communicating what we do to our community.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times it's like, and then I get stupid stuff like, oh, you teach people how to flush the toilet. And I'm like, no. You want to come sit in on one of my classes on disinfection? You know, let's see how you do. You know, it's bad. We've done a bad job of communicating as far as what we do. And even when I was an operator, you know, we have our own vocab. You know, I can't have people over and start talking about BOD and TSS and all this stuff. They have no idea what I'm talking about. You know, they have no idea. Turbidity, they have, they're lost.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's hard to sometimes, I think that's something that we really have to work at, is how do we relate to the rest of the people in our community by our vocab? Yeah. You know, because a lot of times we'll shut down. You know, oh, what do you do? Oh, I do this, I teach this, or I clean water. But how water is so intrinsically linked to, you know, our environment, our communities. It's like every time you brush or flush, do you realize that someone's on the other end of that? And it's
both
like
ends,
we have to find a way to communicate with everyone else that's not in our industry. We have to find a way to communicate with them that they get it. You know?
Yeah. Now I've seen a lot of people bucking against the toilet to tap. And you know, the concept's been around for so long, but it's just the verbiage behind it. Nobody wants to hear toilet to tap. We don't want to visualize that. Like,
no, and we've been doing it. And here's the thing, Mr. Blackman. We've been doing this for years.
The 70s, right? Yeah.
No, we've been doing this for years. All the water we have is all the water that we will have.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's already toilet to tap for years. Right? I could be drinking water. It could be Cleopatra's bath water for all I know. You know, we've been doing this.
Yeah.
You know, and now they're using it to make snow. They're using reclaimed water for wine and for beer. They have competitions. And it's like, but the verbiage, like you said, how we communicate this stuff, we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, 100%. What have you seen in the industry and your travels, or even talking to some of your students, maybe, to get the younger generation interested in the industry? And then also, like I always say that I focus on the aging workforce. A lot of people focus on the aging infrastructure. I focus on the aging workforce. That silver tsunami, people leaving, that skill knowledge gap when OG retires and a youngster comes in. How do you mitigate that? How do you make that gap less and less?
So a lot of that is, again, how we present ourselves to our communities. And, you know, I remember, I'll tell you a quick story. I remember coming into a training, and I drove from Connecticut up to upstate New York, and I come into the training, and I didn't remember which room it was in. I'm searching around, and it hit me. I come into this room, and I didn't realize that this was a water training. I thought it was like an old folks home. There was bald heads and gray hairs everywhere. So I'm like, where am I? Are we playing bingo? What's going on here? And they're like, no, this is the training, you know? And it hit me at that point. I'm like, man, we are up against it. And so I think there's a couple different things. One, obviously the first one is, all right, are we paying individuals enough to make this job attractive? Number two is, how do we market what we do? Right? And so I go into a room and I talk about this, and I get all the OGs like, yeah, I like the term operator. It's like, we already have you. We have you. What do we need? What do we need to get the next generation? You know, do they want to be called water and wastewater specialists?
Or technicians,
or technicians, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we already got y'all. We're trying to get the next group. And then even just how we market as far as like our magazines and everything we have. You know, I tease my local MA. I'm like,
the trade shows,
yeah, I need like the NSYNC boy band hot guys out there to market our industry. Something that kids could identify with. I don't
100%,
need a bunch
100%.
of old gray-haired people out there trying to market for our industry.
So
it's like, what do we look like to our communities?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I applaud those going into high schools and going, getting them while they're young, because I do feel like a lot of youngsters, we wanted to be firemen, policemen, astronauts, doctors because of the uniform. I'm biased, but I think public works should have their own uniform. I think it could be it could be a short or a pant and top, a shirt set with like a different logo or chevron or something.
Yeah, give us some polo and some jeans or something.
Something that says that guy is in wastewater, that guy is in water, that guy is in streets. I can be that one day, instead of just a orange vest in the middle of the street. So yeah. All right. So let's say you're commissioned to put up a billboard, and this billboard is in the most trafficked area of beautiful Morrisville. What ask of your community?
I don't think we have a billboard in Morrisville.
Yeah. All right. You're the first. What ask of your community in regards to wastewater would you put on this billboard?
Stop, look, and listen. That's it. Just stop, look, and listen. Your public works.
Okay.
and buy your public works. Stop, look, and listen. I take that from the old school MC Light. It's like, this is what we need to do. Stop, look, and listen. So we take it so for granted that we have these services. And when we're bunkered up in our home, we don't think about those who are still working. Stop, look, and listen to what they have to say. Communicate value.
Okay. Stop, looking, listen. It is. All right. Let's say I'm coming to town. I'm coming to Morrisville, and I text you ahead of time. I say, Steven, where can I go to get the best burger in town? Where are you sending me?
I'm sending you to my front porch.
Okay. You grilling it up? All right.
Listen, I got a smoking problem. That's with me. That's with me. Okay. All right. So I got my offset stick burner. I got 3 piles of wood in the back. I got apple, cherry, hickory. So we can smoke some stuff on that, make some burgers. I got my Traeger. We can do some stuff on that. I got the Blackstone. We're going to do some smash burgers. We can do something on that. I got the propane burner. We can do something on that. We ain't going nowhere. You staying on the porch.
I like it, man. Tell me your best cut of meat. What you cooking this year? It's your birthday, it's your anniversary. You happy as all get out? What kind of cut you asking for?
Oh, that's a toss-up. I like me a good brisket.
Okay.
I like me a good brisket. And at the same time, I make my own bacon. So you give me a chance to smoke a pork belly, and I got my slicer. I'm gonna cut it thick with the pepper and everything else. You'll find yourself eating bacon for dinner. It's like
it works. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we all know that Steven gets busy, and when there's an Armageddon, go to Steven's house because he's gonna cook it right.
Yeah, you coming to the porch. That's what I'm saying, Joseph. You coming to the porch.
I love it. All right, Steven. Thanks for hopping on the show. Thanks for hopping on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your wealth of information and knowledge with us today. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Steven, any final words before we get out of here?
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate your platform and what you do. And, for my little voice, this has been great. So I appreciate the opportunity. Cool. Thank you, Mr. Blackman.
For sure. All right. Well, this has been the Public Works Podcast, and thank you everybody for tuning in.